Hello, fellow risk takers, and welcome to my worst investment ever. Stories of loss to keep you winning. In our community, we know that to win in investing, you must take risk, but to win big, you've got to reduce it. To join our community, go to myworstinvestmentever.com right now, and you'll receive the following 5 free benefits. First, you get the risk reduction checklist I created from the lessons I've learned from all my guests. Second, you get my weekly investment research email to help you increase your return. Third, you get a 25% discount on all A Stotts Academy courses. Fourth, you get instant access to our Facebook community to get to know guests and fellow listeners. And finally, you get my curated list of the top 10 podcast episodes. Fellow risk takers, this is your worst podcast host, Andrew Stotts from A Stotts Investment Research. And I'm here with featured guest, Flavilla Fongang. Flavilla, are you ready to rock?
I am ready. Let's go.
So, Flavilla is a top 5 most influential tech woman. She is author of 99 Strategies to Get Customers, international keynote speaker, BBC brand strategist, brand growth coach, branding and marketing agency MD, TLA Black Woman, in tech founder, and Tech Brains Talk podcast. My goodness, Flavia, take a minute and tell us a little bit about your life.
I love that. I think, sometimes I forget all the things that I do and, it's amazing. But yes, so my journey started born in Paris, not with a silver spoon in my mouth. I grew up in the ghetto of Paris and moved to London just out of curiosity. And I didn't speak a word of English at that point, but I think, behind me is my curious mind of looking for something that I've never done before and getting myself out of my comfort zone. And yes, and naturally I was drawn to London, and arriving in London was a bit of a awakening for me. I realized, wow, people, there's more potential. There's so much more I can accomplish in London, which led me to moving now almost 20 years being in London, feeling myself like a Londoner, even if I still have that very strong French accent. I guess so. I've done so many crazy things in my life, and like my name defines Flavilla as a butterfly. I love reinventing myself.
Mm. And what would you say is kind of your most interesting reinvention over the years?
I went from the world of oil and gas to world of fashion and luxury to FMCG to now being in technology. And it's probably the best, I shouldn't say the best move, I say like probably the smartest move I've made, because technology is more and more part of everything that we do. And choosing
Mm.
technology as a focus, as running an agency in branding and marketing and choosing technology gave me so much clarity and also understanding that we can make an impact and support our clients who want to make an impact on a larger scale. And that's fantastic. And, if you look at all the situation around the world, technology has saved us, have helped us stay connected. So
Mm.
that was the best decision I've made.
Sounds good. Well, I guess that's kind of a setup. If that's the best decision you made, now it's time to share your worst investment ever made. And since no one ever goes into their worst investment thinking it will be, tell us a bit about the circumstances leading up to it and tell us your story.
Yes. And that's so, so true. People don't talk enough about their failures and they look at you and say, oh, wow, you're so lucky. I think there's no luck in anything that I've done. It's that the fact that I stood up every time, I fell into a situation. And I always say to people, you either learn or you either win. There's only the two choices that you have. But really for me, as I say, I've always reinvented myself. I've started a new career where I didn't have any experience. I self-teach myself. This is what I've done. I read books, probably as many books as you have behind you. And I read a lot of books. And when I want to do something, I would, I stay curious. So as I mentioned, I worked in oil and gas, and then from that point, I always had a passion for fashion and decided to become a fashion stylist. So self-taught myself, read a lot of books, and learned about becoming a fashion stylist. And then quickly realized, that or being a fashion stylist is about personal branding. And I realized there's an element about people, but it's also the element about business. There's a difference between being a business and being a brand. Starbucks is a brand, a coffee shop is a business. Are you commodity or are you a profitable business? And this is when you become a brand. And, and I do have, when I started I started as a brand consultant, so really helping people around and really looking in every single direction, finding business from a plumber to a consultant or a life coach and so forth. And I realized that I wasn't eating my own food. I always say to people, pick a niche, and I wasn't picking a niche. And I still didn't listen because I think there's this fear of losing. If you pick a niche, you're going to lose opportunities, which is a stupid mistake that that I realized I've made. But as I've become from a consultant to an agency, I started hiring people. But most importantly, the mistake that we made, that I've made, because it's my mistake, is that I was charging by the hour. But the problem with hourly rate is that if you are very efficient, if you're really good at what you do, you lose a lot of money. So I would think that, for example, for a logo, it was maybe a couple of, a week or two to do that. So I would charge by the hour. And quickly realize that, wait a minute, some bigger agencies would take 6 months to even a year to create a logo and be paid £1 million. There's obviously something wrong I'm doing right there. And I can see the work of my clients, thriving and making millions. And I say, wait a minute, there's something that I need to change in terms of how I do things. And that's really when I moved away from hourly rate to value-based pricing. And that's really very important. A lot of businesses out there are unable to measure the value of what they do. If you are in any industry, you think about it, a lot of people don't ask their clients in terms of what has been the quantitative and qualitative impact of working with us. That will help you figure out where you are, and also figure out what type of clients that you need to work with. Again, having a focus on technology also makes us realize that if we work technology companies, they make an impact on a larger scale. So therefore, the value that we're bringing is much, much bigger. Whatever it is a fintech company, whatever it is a AI company, they're making an impact on a larger scale. So therefore, the value that we bring by helping them tell their story, position themselves, should be aligned to that. And that's where, even if, talking about that, literally yesterday, we had to pull up a strategy in 2 days, which can take 3 months. But the fact that people hire us is because we deliver. And that prime service, that prime delivery capability is that what makes us build the value. And I say, you can ask, I say like, you pay for what you get what you pay for. Ask, someone who doesn't know how to do the job, they might cost you £50 or whatever it is. It take 4 hours to figure out a situation. But somebody's an expert, has it all figured out, and it take you just a minute to know exactly think that you could have cost you £1 million in investment. And that's one thing that really changed my mind. It's like, you know what? It doesn't matter. If it takes you, say, oh, you did it in 2 hours. Well, okay. So what? You want to hire somebody, go and hire somebody, a graphic designer or anybody else. Understand exactly the value of working with somebody who is good at what they do.
I wonder if you can go back in time to when you were kind of realizing that the charging by hour just doesn't work. Like, was there a particular day or moment that you can remember where you're like, I'm just running as fast as I can and I'm never going to catch up? Because I know some of the listeners are at that point, and I'd love to hear kind of when you came to that realization.
I think I came to that realization when people say, oh my gosh, you're so cheap. I send, the code to a client and say, okay, this is going to be, I tell you the price, it was like £5,000, to make a logo, say, oh, you're so cheap. I think, oh my gosh, am I? Because I was comparing myself to these online freelancers, Upwork, which charge, £5 to make a logo, but they're recycling logos, which are definitely not to the level of what we do. And then I realized I need to speak to other leaders, because a lot of people work independently and think that we need to speak to other people in the industry. That's why I joined agency networks and like, oh, wow. And I look at their work thinking, oh my gosh, it's not even half of what we do. And they were impressed by what we did. And I think don't go alone and think that you have it all figured out. Understand why people choose to work with you. Again, think niche is important. And there's not many companies that specialize, agencies that specialize in technology. But having this conversation with people in your peers, ask them, or sometimes just being undercover and asking, going and as we did that at the beginning, where we go undercover and ask other agencies their rate and be like, oh wow, we are definitely cheap. And cheap is not good, because when people do not value your services, and people pay, when people spend, 100K or whatever it is with us, they know that, well, I'm getting that money, but I'm going to get a great service. I'm going to get top quality service, and so forth. And that's what's important.
So let me ask you, what lessons did you learn from this experience? I think it's also important to think about that person out there that's doing it right now.
Yeah.
Like what is it that drove you and drove me and other people to say, I've got to charge by the hour. I can't charge too much. I'm afraid to, what lessons did you learn from this?
Yeah, what lesson learned from it is that don't align yourself with the followers, align yourself with the leaders. That's one thing I would
Mm,
say. I've aligned myself with the followers, so therefore I was going for the lowest bracket instead of going for the higher bracket. When you actually charge more, people believe that you are definitely the best in breed. So that's essentially for luxury products. People are happy to spend, £5,000 for a bag, even if they can get exactly the same thing or has the same purpose as a bag at discount stores. That's not what it means. There's also behind that, I'm not just an agency leader. I'm also I've come with my personal brand, which I've built. That's the reason
mm,
people don't even question any of our pricing. And if you question our pricing, you don't understand our value. So therefore, I'm not interested in working with you.
mm,
And that's this art as well of saying no. The more you say no, more you have, you don't have to be running up and down, having 25 people waste your time and always asking for a bargain. Go for the top notch, who will value what you do and are going to be behind you to tell you how to do your job.
mm.
That's that big difference. So I have the power to say no because I haven't made that decision and positioning from the start.
Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, listen to that. Align yourself with the leaders, not the followers. And she gave a great example about it by talking about, well, I used to like look at Upwork, which is the absolute bottom of the barrel, or let's say the lowest price option. And I used to compare myself to that. And I need to be comparing myself to the people that are charging $1 million for the same product, and if I get closer to that, then I'm going to be valuing myself where it should be. So I think that's really great learning. Maybe I'll just summarize a couple of takeaways that I got from this. I mean, the first thing is like you we want to sell outcome. We want to sell result. And when someone has a problem or they have a need and you can solve it, it doesn't matter to that client whether that took you 3 hours or 30 hours. They just want the result. They want it on time and they want to get it done and they're willing to pay for that result. I like to talk about, in particularly in one of the spaces that I do a lot of stuff in online courses is that people pay for transformation. They pay a lot for transformation, but they pay a small amount for knowledge. And I'll give you an example. I took two courses myself. One that I got for $10 and one that I got for $1,500. And I did neither of them for a little while. And guess which one I felt guilty about and felt frustrated that I wasn't doing it? It wasn't the $10 one. I could just forget that. But it was that $1,500 one. And the reason why I paid was because the author of that course said, you're going to go through a transformation. And at the end of this course, you're going to be here or your money back. And I just thought, wow, it really made me think, just think about if someone's in the fitness industry, there's plenty of books out there. They cost $10, and you can get them off the shelf and they give you everything you need to know. But that's just knowledge. That's not transformation. So I think my big takeaway is, sell outcome. And I would say also in my own experience, I find that sometimes the reason why I've underpriced things is because I'm chasing revenue. I don't want to lose that customer. I, get into a point where it's like, well, I'd rather go low and make sure we get it and stuff like that. But, part of what's happened over the years is that you get more confidence and you get better at what you're doing, and then you can start to turn those things away. So I definitely, recognize that and have felt that way, myself, and I know plenty of the listeners had. Is there anything else you would add to that?
I would say, it's one thing that I would say to people is like, if you don't ask, you don't get. So be cheeky. I think that keep that mentality of you'd be very surprised how many people want to help if you ask for it. So that's how, people say that your success, being good at what you do is expected. But what you do beyond that, that's really where the beauty is.
That's so true. And just today, I've had an experience, and this experience was kind of interesting, and it reminds me a little bit of your align yourself with the leaders, not the followers. And that was, we had to submit a quote to a company to do a particular thing. And the reality is that the company had a choice. Either they do this themselves or they hire us. there really isn't a competitor for what we do. And we can do it so well that we know that they know we're the only ones. So one of my team basically said, well, let's just figure out how much it costs us to do it. And so we went through all these costs, and I just looked at it, wait a minute, this is just getting too cheap. I mean, we're just going down to the costs. Switch this around and say, how much would it cost the customer to do this on their own? And let's understand what they're spending. And let's start at that point and say, you're going to solve this problem for 100,000. We can solve it for, let's say our cost of solving it, or let's say if we want to lowball it, we could solve it for 40,000. But why do we need to leave the rest on the table? If we can solve it for 70,000 or 80,000, we're still saving them 20 or 30%. So, that idea of kind of making sure you're also looking at what are the alternatives for the client is another thing that you remind me of as I listen to your story. So.
Absolutely. And I think people don't spend enough time with that value-based value conversation, understanding what's going to be the outcome of working with you and how you measure that. And if you say, you're going to make working with us, you estimate that you're going to make £1 million, spending 10% of that, to invest it, that seems like nothing. And that's where the beauty is. And that conversation is so important, and people just go over it and they go their, preconceived pricing list and that's it. And then they miss out and leave a lot of things a lot of money on the table.
So I want you now to think about some of my listeners. There are some listeners out there that are, underpricing, and they could, they've learned a lot from this. But I want you to answer this question thinking about them. Based on what you learned from this story and what you continue to learn, what one action would you recommend our listeners take to avoid suffering the same fate?
Double your price. Simple. Double your price. You will remove overtime wasters, and you will only have people that really enjoy working with you and value you. Double your price. Honestly, double your price. Forget about the market, forget about the economy, forget about it. It's people who have money out there. It's people who are still investing. There's still money on the table. Double your price.
Well, there happens to be some people in my business in this room, so I thought I would just announce that the advice that we've got is to double our price, and I love it. It's the most actionable answer I think I've had, and anybody out there can immediately do it. So, Kay, double our price. Chris, double our price. I love it. Yep, thumbs up from my room here in my office. All right, last question. What's your number one goal for the next 12 months?
The number one goal for my next 12 months is to get myself out of the equation. So I've become my own burden as much as my own strength, where people love who I am and want to work as well with me. So I'm kind of lead generator because of my personality, but I need to get myself less and less involved in the management operation that's already delegated, but more of the management I need to be removed. So yeah, so that's my thing, get myself out of the equation.
That's an exciting one. Well, I look forward to hearing about that 12 months from now.
Yes, me
I
too.
may be calling your office and there's nobody there. They're like, no, she's out.
Yes, I love the power of delegation, so I'm good at that. That's one thing for sure.
Excellent, excellent. Well, listeners, there you have it, another story of loss to keep you winning. My number one goal for the next 12 months is to help you, my listener, reduce risk and increase return in your life. To achieve this, I created our community at myworstinvestmentever.com. I'll see you there. As we conclude, Flavilla, I want to thank you again for coming on the show. And on behalf of A Stotts Academy, I hereby award you alumni status for turning your worst investment ever into your best teaching moment. The crowd roars. Now, do you have any parting words for the audience?
I will say thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. That's brilliant. I will add that to my LinkedIn profile.
There you go. Fantastic. Well, that's a wrap on another great story to help us create, grow, and protect our wealth. Fellow risk takers, this is your worst podcast host, Andrew Stotts, saying, I'll see you on the upside.